Okay. Welcome to day 2. Yesterday we went up to 2.16. Let's start with 4 times. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Arjun is describing his unwillingness or inability to fight, and his limbs are not cooperating, his body is not cooperating, and Krishna starts admonishing him, saying that you grieve over those who should not be grieved for, and yet speak like as if you are wise. The wise ones do not lament, do not sorrow over the dead or the living, or that which has gone and that which has not yet come. That which is gone, that which has not yet come. Gatasu na gatasu. There was never a time when I was not there, or when you or these kings were not, nor is it a fact that we shall all cease to be. Just as boyhood, youth, and old age are attributed to the soul through this body, even so it attains another body. The wise one does not get deluded about this. O son of Kunti, the contacts between the senses and their objects, it is the contact between the senses and their object which gives rise to the feelings of heat and cold, pleasure, pain, etc. And these are transitory and fleeting. Therefore, Arjun, endure them. Arjun, the wise man to whom pain and pleasure are alike, and who is not tormented by these contacts, becomes eligible for immortality. The unreal has no existence. The real never ceases to be. The reality of both has thus been perceived by the seers of the truth. Know that alone to be imperishable, which pervades this universe, for no one has the power to destroy this indestructible substance. Ultimately, these bodies pertaining to the imperishable, indefinable, and the eternal soul are spoken of as perishable. Therefore, Arjun, fight. Both of them are ignorant, one who considers the soul to be capable of killing, and one who takes it as killed. For the soul neither kills nor is killed. It is never born, nor it ever dies, nor does it become only after being born. For it is unborn, eternal, everlasting, and primeval. Even though the body is slain, the self is not. Arjun, the man who knows this self to be imperishable, eternal, and free from birth and decay, how and whom will he cause to be killed? How and whom will he kill? As a person shedding worn out garments takes on other new ones. Just like that, the embodied soul, casting off worn out bodies, enters into another which is new. Neither can weapons cut it, nor can fire burn it. Water cannot wet it, nor can the wind dry it. For this self is incapable of being cut or burned by fire or being dissolved by water, and is undryable by air as well. This soul is eternal, omnipresent, immovable, constant, and everlasting. It is unmanifest, incomprehensible, and is spoken of as immutable. Therefore, knowing it as such, you should not grieve. And Arjun, even if you should suppose that this soul is subject to constant birth and death, even then you shouldn't grieve like this. For in that case, death is inevitable for the born, rebirth is inevitable for the dead. You should not therefore grieve over the inevitable. Arjun, before birth, beings are not manifest to our human senses. On death, they return to the unmanifest again. They are manifest only in the interim between birth and death. What occasion then for lamentation? Hardly anyone perceives this self as marvelous. Very few speak of it as marvelous, and even fewer hear of it as marvelous, while there are very, very few who know it not even on hearing of it, while there are many who know it not even upon hearing of it. Arjun, this soul or self dwelling in the bodies of all can never be slain. Therefore, you should not mourn for anyone. Mourn for anyone. Besides, considering your own duty too, you should not waver, for there is nothing more welcome for a man of the warrior class than a righteous war. Arjun, happy are the Kshatriyas who get such an unsolicited opportunity for war, which is an open gateway to heaven. Now, if you refuse to fight this righteous war, then shirking your duty and losing your reputation, you will incur sin. And also, people will pour undying infamy on you. And infamy brought on a person enjoying popular esteem is worse than death. And the great warriors who thought highly of you will now despise you, thinking that it was fear which drove you away from the battle. And your enemies, disparaging your might, will speak many unbecoming words. What can be more distressing than this? Even if you die, you will win the heaven. If you conquer and you enjoy the sovereignty of the earth, therefore, stand up, Arjun, determined to fight. Treating alike victory and defeat, gain and loss, pleasure and pain, get ready for the battle. Fighting thus, you will not incur sin. Arjun, this attitude of mind has been presented to you from the point of view of Gnana Yoga. Now, hear the same as presented from the standpoint of Karma Yoga, the yoga of selfless action. Equipped with this attitude of mind, you will be able to throw off completely the shackles of karma. In this path of Karma Yoga, there is no loss of effort. No effort is lost, nor is there fear of contrary result. Even a little practice of this discipline saves one from the terrible fear of birth and death. It saves one from even the most terrible fears. Arjun, in this Karma Yoga, the intellect is determinate and directed singly towards one ideal, whereas the intellect of the undecided, ignorant ones wanders in all directions after innumerable aims. Arjun, those who are full of worldly desires and devoted to the letter of the Vedas, who look upon heaven as the supreme goal and argue that there is nothing beyond heaven, are unwise. They utter flowery speech recommending many rituals of various kinds for attainment of pleasure and power with rebirth as their fruit. Those whose minds are carried away by such words and who are deeply attached to pleasures and worldly power cannot attain the determinate intellect, the enlightened intellect. The Vedas must deal with the evolutes of the three gunas, the three modes of Prakriti, which is the worldly enjoyments and the means of attaining such enjoyments. Be indifferent to these enjoyments and their means. Rise above the pairs of opposites like pleasure and pain. Establish in the eternal existence, in the sattva, absolutely unconcerned about the fulfillment of what you have, what you want, and preservation of what has been attained, and self control. Yoga and Kshema. Be unconcerned about both attaining and guarding what has been attained. The knower of Brahman who has attained enlightenment has as much use for all the knowledge, all the Vedas, as one who stands at the brink of water body overflowing on all sides as for a small reservoir of water. Your right is to work only and not to the fruit thereof. Do not be the cause of the fruit of action, nor let your attachment be to the inaction. Arjun, perform your duties established in yoga, renouncing attachment, and be even minded in success and failure. Evenness of the mind is called yoga. Samatvam yoga uchyate. Action with a selfish motive is far inferior to this yoga in the form of equanimity. Do seek refuge in this equipoise of mind, Arjun, for poor and wretched are those who are instrumental in making their actions bear fruit. Endowed with equanimity, one sheds in this life both good and evil. Therefore, strive for the practice of this yoga of equanimity. Skill in action lies in the practice of this yoga. For wise ones possessing the equipoised mind, renouncing the fruit of actions, and freed from the shackles of birth, attain the blissful supreme state. When your mind will have fully crossed the mire of delusion, you will then grow indifferent to the enjoyments of this world, as well as to those that are yet to be heard of. When your intellect, confused by hearing conflicting statements, will rest steady and undistracted in the samadhi, you will then attain yoga. Arjun says, Krishna, what is the definition of someone who is realized, stable of the mind, and established in samadhi? How does the one who has attained speak? How do they sit? How do they walk? Shri Bhagwan said, Arjun, when one thoroughly casts off all cravings of the mind and is content in the self through the joy of the self, they are then called sthita pragya, established in the knowledge. The sage whose mind remains unperturbed amid sorrows, whose thirst for pleasures has altogether disappears, and who is free from passion, fear, and anger, is called sthita pragya. One who is unattached to everything and meeting with good and evil neither rejoices nor recoils. His mind is stable. When, like a tortoise that withdraws in its limb from all directions, he withdraws all his senses from the sense objects, his mind becomes steady. Sense objects turn away from him who does not enjoy them with his senses, but the taste for them persists. This relish also disappears in the case of the realized person. Turbulent by nature, the senses, even of a wise person who is practicing self-control, forcibly carry away the mind, Arjun. Therefore, having controlled all the senses and concentrating his mind, therefore, having controlled all the senses, he should sit for meditation, devoting uh, himself, heart and soul to me. For him whose senses are under his control is known to have a stable mind. The person dwelling on sense objects develops attachments for them. From attachment or identification springs up desire, and from desire unfulfilled ensues anger. From the anger arises delusion. From delusion, confusion of memory. From confusion of memory, loss of reason. And from loss of reason, one goes to complete ruin. But the self-controlled sadhak, seeker, while enjoying the various sense objects through their senses, which are disciplined and free from likes and dislikes, attains the equanimity and the bliss, the prasad. With the attainment of such prasad, the calmness, the joy, all his sorrows come to an end, and the intellect of such person of tranquil mind, soon withdrawing itself from all sides, becomes firmly established in the divine consciousness. One who has not controlled their mind and senses cannot have a steady intellect, nor are they able to contemplate or meditate. Without contemplation, they cannot have peace, and how can there be happiness for one lacking peace of mind? As the wind carries away a boat upon the waters, even so, of the senses moving amongst sense objects, the one to which the mind is attached takes away his discrimination. So the one whose mind is attached, the senses carry away their mind just like the wind carries away the boat. Therefore, Arjun, one whose senses are completely restrained from their objects is said to have an established intellect or a stable mind. That which is like night to all beings, in that state of divine knowledge and supreme bliss, the realized yogi keeps awake, and that ever-changing transient worldly happiness in which all beings keep awake is night to the seer. As the waters of different rivers enter the ocean, which, though full on all sides, remains undisturbed, likewise, one in whom all enjoyments merge themselves without causing disturbance attains peace. Not one who hankers after such enjoyments. One who has given up all the desires and moves free from attachment and identification to them, and the thirst for enjoyment, such one attains the peace. This is called Brahmi condition, Arjun, the realized condition, and having reached this state, he overcomes the delusion. Established in this state, even at the last moment, it leads to attaining ultimate bliss. Om Tatsaditi Srimad Bhagavad Gita Upanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Sankhya Yogo Nama Dhrtashtra. There comes the second chapter called Sankhya Yoga to an end.